This man, Klaus Schwab, has served on the boards of the Daily Mail, Vontobel Holding, a private banking group, and served as a member of the Bilderberg Group, which is a conglomerate of the world's elite that discuss the consensus of a free market, Western capitalism, and global interests. In 1971, a particular organisation was born, from not just Klaus Schwab, but was spearheaded by in fact 3 people. These 3 people at that given time were 3 of the most influential men of America. Henry Kissinger, who served as the United States Secretary of State and National Security Advisor under the presidential administration of Richard Nixon, and was one of the key influential figures in the Bilderberg Group. Henry Kissinger was also Klaus Schwab's mentor, where a CIA-funded course run by Henry at Harvard was where the birth of the World Economic Forum came from.
Yes, there was one course, one seminar of Henry Kissinger, which really opened my eyes. I wasn't accepted to the seminar, but I sat in. I think he let me in because I was German. And it was relatively shortly after the war. There were not too many Germans here. And this created a friendship which has endured until today. And Henry has been several times in Davos.
Next we have Herman Kahn, a founder of the Hudson Institute and military strategist, and was even called the real Dr. Strangelove. Herman at the time was the leading figure in thermonuclear strategic planning, where during the mid-50s would see Henry Kissinger and Herman Kahn cross paths. And finally we have John Galbraith, a Canadian-American economist and an intellectual at Harvard. In 1945, after the death of Roosevelt and the end of World War II, John was sent to London to create a division directorship of the United States Strategic Bombing Survey, where he was tasked with evaluating the overall economic effects of the wartime bombing, later going to Nagasaki and Hiroshima to evaluate the effects of the bombings. In 1958, Galbraith became the Paul M. Warburg Chair in Economics at Harvard. This is the same position that he would hold when he would first be introduced to a young Klaus Schwab. These 3 men are responsible for what is now known as the World Economic Forum.
We are in the midst of a crisis, a transformational crisis. The world will be quite different when it comes out of the crisis. So we have 2 tasks. The first one is to help to manage the crisis, and second, to shape the post-crisis world.
In the year 1970, Klaus Schwab wrote a letter to the European Commission and asked for help in setting up a non-commercial think tank for European business leaders. The European Commission would then sponsor the event.
The Commission is a group of politicians, men and women, who meet every Wednesday in Brussels. We call them commissioners. Together they form the government of Europe, so to speak. They all have their own specific field of responsibilities and come from different countries.
Schwab then organised a 2-week business managerial conference, and in 1971 the first meeting of the World Economic Forum commenced, held in none other than Davos, Switzerland. Around 450 participants from 31 countries took part in Schwab's first European Management Symposium. The project was recorded as organised by Klaus Schwab and his secretary, Hilde Stahl, who, later the same year, would become Klaus Schwab's wife. One of the most influential groups that spurred on the creation of Klaus Schwab's symposium was a group known as the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome is a think tank of scientific minds and elites that mirrors the World Economic Forum in many ways.
We need to encourage civil society, media and political parties to embark on what I would call public education campaigns with a focus on democracy and human rights, and by all means of tolerance.
Aurelio Pecci, an Italian industrialist, Alexandra King, a British chemist and pioneer of the Sustainable Development Movement, and David Rockefeller, an American banker and philanthropist, whose family name is possibly the most notable, being one of the richest families to ever live. Among the Club of Rome's first accomplishments was a 1972 book entitled The Limits to Growth that heavily focused on global overpopulation, warning that if the world's consumption patterns and population growth continued at the same high rates of the time, the Earth would strike its limits within a century. It was soft eugenics conceived from the fear of overpopulation.